Guys, what's up? This is Kevin Somani here, back with the Kev Pod, the Indian Sports Podcast. And today we have someone from USA, the Bluebirds Podcast host, John Saeger, with us. So, hey, John, what's up?
Hi, how are you?
I'm all good. It's just a Sunday evening. You're kind of a bit lazy, but it's sports, so love to talk anytime. What about you?
Thanks. I'm about to begin my lazy Sunday. It's a little rainy day, so I plan on taking it easy today and then watching the Philadelphia Phillies. They're on Sunday Night Baseball tonight, so that's how I will end my night.
That's great, though. Even a lot of NBA games today, I guess, it start from the afternoon and then it will go down till the night. So, you have a good Sunday. You have got WrestleMania as well, which I keenly follow sometimes. So, you have a good jam-packed sports Sunday.
I did, right, and I didn't watch WrestleMania yesterday, but I did see a lot of updates on Twitter. Apparently, it's a very this was a good one. Apparently.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so straight away starting with the podcast, what are your views on Philadelphia 76ers? The match today they had against Oklahoma City.
They played well, especially given the turmoil they've had over the last few weeks with Joel Embiid being out. I think it's been a little bit of a process to borrow a phrase from another era, getting him back into the lineup. It hasn't gone quite as well. They played well without him when he was gone, as teams get through the season where they hit a bit of a drag, as especially they've been playing at such a high clip. To see them play at anything less than that has been unique for this season. Last night they bounced back. They performed very well. Now, the Oklahoma City Thunder aren't very good, but sometimes you need a performance against a team like that to bounce back and, get back into your rhythm. And, they're in a tight race with the Brooklyn Nets for the top seed in the Eastern Conference, which, given how they perform at home versus on the road over the last couple of years, having that top seed is a very big deal to them. So hopefully, the win last night, gets their mojo going back a little bit, and they'll be able to reel off a couple of wins this week.
Yeah, even I hope so. Like the last time they played against New Orleans Pelicans, I was like, wow, what actually happened to Philadelphia 76ers? The Zion dominance around the rim has been great, and then Joel Embiid coming back. So it was a kind of worrisome for me. Because personally I love Doc Rivers. I love his philosophy of play, and then when he got with Daryl Morey, so I had some expectations, but this was not coming. 94-101 against New Orleans Pelicans, but great bounce back. Oklahoma City in the 93 and Philadelphia 76ers 117. So a good thing which we saw the next two matches, that is against Dallas Mavericks and Philadelphia 7 and Brooklyn Nets. Sorry. So two great matchups coming up this week, which I'm looking forward to. I really want to see how Joel Embiid operates against Kristaps Porzingis, who is getting a very low form, and also the stuffed up Brooklyn Nets. The super powered. So
Right, that will definitely be a big game this week. I would imagine that's probably the one game this week everyone in Philadelphia has circled on their calendars.
yeah, because they have got so great bigs in their and in their rosters. They've got Jeff Green, they've got LaMarcus Aldridge, they've got Blake Griffin, they've got DeAndre Jordan, not DeMarcus, because he went to Clippers. Sorry. So it's going to be a good matchup. How they go against Brooklyn Nets. Even they have lost against Los Angeles Lakers yesterday night. So it's going to be a really interesting matchup.
I think so. And more than anything, it's going to be a matchup of defense versus offense. The Sixers are the best defensive team in the Eastern Conference, if not in all of basketball. Conversely, the Nets, could score, they could drop 130, 140 points on any team on any given night. So how they pair up, I really it is going to be interesting, and I really hope it does happen in the playoffs this year, because it, they almost seem destined to face off at some point in the playoffs, whether it's in the finals or an earlier round. So if they are able to do that, I'm interested to see how the styles pair up.
Yeah, that's correct. And watching Oklahoma City Thunder yesterday night, I saw someone's name, popping out, which remind me of the process era, which we are going to talk ahead in the show. It was Furkan Korkmaz, 20 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 turnovers, 5 steals, 1 block. That's a heavy stat line when you see. And someone who has spent so much time with, Philadelphia 76ers. So tell me, how do you see, the process era right now?
Right now, or more of the
Yeah,
the sort of totality of the like the
Yeah, so
broader
yeah,
picture.
so we are talking about a broader picture, that
Mhm.
post process era. So right now, it gives a glimpse of post the process era which we had,
Mhm.
and it was a really bad form for Philadelphia 76ers. The later stage post 2015, they had some really great games. So what do you think about that process era?
It's been interesting. It was definitely something that hasn't been. I would say it was a little divisive in Philadelphia, where I think everyone understood
Hmm.
this is, hopefully they do land the players, in especially like Joel Embiid, who can elevate your team to be a top contender in the Eastern Conference. The way the team went about it, that's another story. They went from it was a very long rebuilding process, and I wasn't on board with it at the time. I didn't like it. It doesn't mesh with my idea of what true competitive sports is about. Although I understood it, that doesn't mean I've viewed the team any differently. I think that's just how the NBA is set up for teams to improve, and it's an unfortunate part of the NBA system where tanking is rewarded. So, and the Sixers, one difference is they just announced it publicly that this is what they're doing. They were very honest about it, and I think that was probably the more jarring thing. But overall, when you look back at the Sixers, especially in comparison to other Philadelphia sports teams, they are the worst of the four franchises in terms of, having an era, multiple eras of dominance. You'd have to look, there was an era from the, mid 70s to mid 80s where they won one championship. And then in the 60s with Wilt Chamberlain, that is where you'd have to go back for their other dominant era. And then after that, after those two eras, you're talking about one great year of Allen Iverson in 2000 and 2001, where they made the NBA Finals. And it's not just about making the finals, it's about having a very competitive team, something that's relevant. Right now, they're relevant in the conversation, and hopefully, they're relevant for another couple of years at this level. Because honestly, as a Sixers fan who's 35 years old, this is the best team I've ever seen. And hopefully, they can keep this core together for another couple of years. I understand the process era a little bit more now, because while I understood the idea was you don't want to be that team that has the seventh or eighth seed in the playoffs, where you're in the playoffs, but you're not going to make it out of the first round anyways. So having a team that's an elite team, it's a first for me, really. And hopefully with the expectations that they can do that over the next couple of years.
Obviously, you talked about the Allen Iverson era, and I don't remember anything post the Allen Iverson era where I have read about the Sixers, because I am a millennial. I was born in 2001. That is a time when 76ers went to the finals. Since I started following the NBA, this is the time when 76ers are actually in the talks and actually are potentially dominant. and the standing says because they're above the Brooklyn Nets. But watching the process, I actually understood about the 76ers in 2015, and that phase was not so good for 76ers. At that time, they were the team which were very bottom of the table. So right now 76ers are really good, but what are your top moments, or what flashbacks do you have when you hear about the 76ers process era?
There isn't a lot of good things to look back at over the last few years. I know, kind of coming up, something like with the fans greeting Markel Fultz, who was struggling with his shooting touch, and how they were very positively encouraged him. I know that Philadelphia tends to get a bad reputation as a supportive sports city, and we're not the most loving city probably, but we like to think of ourselves as fans who kind of recognize some effort. And in that instance, I could see fans, instead of really getting on a player who just lost his shooting abilities completely for almost no reason, just seeing them kind of encourage him to get it through. They had some Fultz chants that were similar to what Minnesota Vikings chants will do with their famous skull chant. And to see them welcome him with like that was, to me, that's something that I'll always kind of file away, as this is an instance of Philadelphia fans being unique in a good way. And I have that. There was, there's some moments like, some game-winning shots. I think TJ McConnell shots are coming to mind. But it's funny. What still stands out to me is what might have actually gotten this process era started, which was they traded for Andrew Bynum, and he had an injury, which is of dubious nature, to where he was injured and couldn't play, but everyone knows he was going bowling and things like that around Philadelphia. So just sort of, that was probably my low as a Sixers fan, and what actually started the process era. So those little moments, good and bad, sort of combine that. And then a few years of heated sports talk radio discussions where fans are debating, is this the right move or not? Right now, I think everyone recognizes it, at least begrudgingly. We'll take having a top contending team.
Yeah, you mentioned a point about Markel Fultz. He is right now considered to be one of the biggest busts, in the draft history. Coming out as number one pick, and then just went away. Right now, he had some good time in Orlando, but he was injured again. What do you think if Markel Fultz would have been, the form which he had in before the draft? Would have Sixers ended the process era soon?
It's that, to me, is what happened to that, to me, is the biggest mystery of the process era, because you can see when he's on the court, you can see the athleticism, and you can see why teams thought so well of him. It is part of the cautionary tale about taking a player who was in I believe, a losing team in college or close to it with the top pick. And it's hard to say what actually happened with that. I think it's a very mental thing. Maybe he's not able to make being an elite basketball player work for him, which I think is one of these things that as a fan we could take for granted, because we expect guys going to be taken number one overall. He's going to work for it. He's going to own up to it. But maybe it's he didn't select himself for the first with a top pick. So in hindsight, if you're a first round pick that taken that high, we expect them to slide right in and play well. What went wrong is a complete mystery. Had he performed better, they would have had that third piece. If he had lived up to expectations, he would have had that third piece, and the formal process error would have probably ended a couple of years ago. However, the good news out of that is that the team now has formed this defensive identity with Matisse Thybulle, Danny Green, Joel Embiid, and Ben Simmons, that they might not have had the Fultz trade worked out. So in a way, even though Fultz didn't work out, it's actually worked out for the team sort of in the long run.
Sorry, my mic wasn't mute. So yeah, obviously, that's a great addition. That having so many great parts still intact with Philadelphia 76ers. What do you think? Who could have been, a pick for Philadelphia 76ers in place of Markel Fultz? Who would you have chosen at that point of time if you know that Markel Fultz is not going to play well or is going to have a down form?
I'd have to look back at the draft to be able to answer that
Okay, I'll give
a little bit better.
I'll give the top
But
10 draft picks. Okay,
sure.
Markel Fultz, Lonzo Ball, Jason Tatum, Josh Jackson, De'Aaron Fox, Jonathan Isaac, Laurie Markkinen, Fred Ntilikina, Dennis Smith Jr., and Zach Collins.
Thanks. I know that I had to remember which top year of the Sixers drafting that was. Oh, Jason Tatum, and I very clearly remember now with the how everything fell out as I'm refueling with my first cup of morning coffee. I'm remembering the whole Fultz Tatum. In hindsight, if anyone could go back, Jason Tatum, clearly I think he's the best of that lot. And I remember at the time thinking, I haven't seen Markel Fultz play. Apparently he's very good. He wasn't on a team that was, like I said, a super relevant college basketball team that year. And when Danny Ainge, who's the general manager of the Celtics, is very savvy, and when you start getting in a trade with him and him being your top rival, I just remember thinking, I don't know if this is going to work out as well as we all hope it works out. So it didn't. Danny Ainge won that trade, although, the Sixers are doing better than the Celtics this year. But, I think it's safe to say that Jason Tatum is, definitely the best player from that class.
I think they could have got Jason Tatum, as you mentioned, because it was a trade. It was a trade from Sacramento via Philadelphia, which Boston had.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a win. It could have been possible, but for me, I guess if their main consideration was a point guard, and the other name which I see as a point guard is De'Aaron Fox. He's playing really good with Sacramento Kings. The team is kind of a mediocre team. I don't know about the coach because Luke Walton is there, so I really don't know. But I know that De'Aaron Fox is the main cog for his process, and everything revolves around him. Thanks to Tyrese Halliburton, who came back. But considering the current situation, if I would be knowing that Markel Fultz is not going to play well, I would have gone for De'Aaron Fox at that particular point of time in the trade.
Right, and I do think with that, and I do remember watching Fox play in college and thinking like, oh, maybe this is a guy that they can be interested in. I think one thing that would have been different with this team is they never would have traded for Tobias Harris, because Tatum would have filled that kind of role. So they would have had more draft capital and assets later on anyways. But, Tatum being sort of the shooter that he is, they wouldn't have had to trade for him. But, De'Aaron Fox he's a very quick player. It's hard to say what's going wrong in Sacramento. I think they've been trying to do what the Sixers have been doing, but they've just been worse at tanking, if that's possible. and they just haven't been able, to trend in a winning direction in quite some time.
That's true, because with Sacramento, it's Phoenix Suns, who haven't had been in the playoffs since the past 10 years, as the stats as the live commentators say. So Phoenix is right now back into contention. They are third in the conference standings. So I am really concerned the way Sacramento is going. But anyways, you're talking about Philadelphia 76ers here right now. uh what are your expectations from the Rivers Maury era right now? What are your expectations? And till now, have they been what you have thought, or what the fan base has been talking about?
I think both my expectations and what the overall fan expectations are is going to the NBA Finals. Or I should say the fan base is, I think there's definitely that is sort of the make or break year that this could be. I think them being in the NBA Finals is, something that everyone has on their mind. I don't know if they lose in 7 games to Brooklyn, if that makes this year, it would make this year disappointing, but I don't know if that makes this year a bust. So I would say, if for myself, if they can perform well against Brooklyn and it's a 7-game series, sort of like they had against Toronto a couple of years ago when Kawhi Leonard beat them with that buzzer
That
beater,
was
which
harsh.
was
That was really harsh.
that was very disappointing. And I remember, to segue into Game of Thrones chatter, that was on the same night that Game of Thrones was airing their finale, and I was watching both at once. The Game of Thrones finale, super disappointing. The Sixers season finale, also disappointing. It was a very, very bad evening, and I didn't realize, because I was watching the game on a laptop and the TV show on the show on my television, I didn't realize how bad the Leonard shot was until the first time I saw the replay the next day, and it was, oh no, that that was awful. Now, hopefully that doesn't happen again this year, but if they show up against Brooklyn and can give them a great series, I don't, and Harden goes off for 50 points in Game 7 or something like that. I wouldn't be I wouldn't be able to knock the team. Now, it depends on how they perform in the moment. So that these are the kind of expectations I'm building in my head, to where I can probably be a little bit more judgmental if they do lose. But if they fall short of the Eastern Conference Finals and everybody's healthy, that would be very disappointing.
Yeah, obviously. uh when we talk about a team's rivals, to win against a team's rivals, you always expect some kind of something bad to happen with our rivals. And
Mhm.
this is a potential conference finals which we are going to see, Nets versus 76ers. And right now Kevin Durant is out. If Kevin Durant was into playing, what would you think, how would be the defensive matchups would be for Philadelphia and 76ers?
It'd be very interesting. I'd have to see, and this Wednesday night will definitely be a preview of that. Ben Simmons will be the determining factor in that series for 2 things. One, for his defense, if he can shut down whichever of the 3 net stars that he's paired up against, that will be huge. Matisse Thybulle will also be an important factor. I'm not sure how they would pair up, um, in terms of, who's going to try to shut down Harden and who's going to try to shut down Durant. But Ben Simmons is a player who, because he hasn't been able to hit 3-point shots consistently, or even attempt them consistently, that he's then transformed himself into this elite defensive player who can shut down any star in the NBA. And his versatility allows him. It's basically him and LeBron are in that class. So he just however he performs in that series, that will be huge, because even if we're looking at the box score and he only has, 15 points, if he holds Harden to 25 points, we might be, the first reaction might be, hey, 25 points is still a lot of points, but for James Harden, that's not that many points. So if he can do that, that's going to be, and sort of make up for his inconsistent offense. I think that will be the thing to look at, because I'm not concerned, especially with the way Brooklyn's interior matches up. I'm not concerned with how Joel Embiid's going to perform. If he's healthy, I think he would probably be the series MVP.
Yeah, like when you said about James Harden, you see, even though he scores a lot, we have seen the other side of him, that is the playmaking ability which he has got into. In Rockets, it was kind of an identity for Rockets itself that you give out ball to James Harden and let him do the isolations, let him do his magic with the ball. But here, when we see, I was kind of concerned, and even I talked about this in my previous podcast, that it's a game of managing egos for Brooklyn Nets, because each of these three weapons are ISO players. They're really really good ISO players. What really concerning was, if Philadelphia are facing Brooklyn Nets, uh, how would Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, and Ben Simmons would really, really, lock down on these three marquee players. That was a thing, and then suddenly you have these two bigs coming out. They don't have Jarrett Allen right now, or it would be a ruckus for them. But I really want to see how they throw bodies on these guys, because mostly I feel if you exhaust them, that would really stop them right now. That's the only thing which I see. And I have seen this trend in Brooklyn Nets, that they let the teams take over till the halftime. When they enter the third quarter, in the third mid quarter, that is the time they actually take off, and then they go into the all offensive mode, which I have seen in the Brooklyn Nets box score as well as in the matches. They play a kind of lousy game there. So if that team has a skill, if that team has a caliber to pick off games which is totally out of their hands, I really want to see how Ben Simmons is going to operate there defensively, because switching to these three guys is going to be fast. You go man to man, that will also cause a problem. You go into zone, that is also going to cause a problem, because we have seen them playing a lot of more ISOs, and sometimes they do a playmaking as well. They pass ball a lot of times. So that is quite concerning for me. That could actually prove if Ben Simmons can be in talks of defensive player of the year or not, and Joel Embiid in the talks of being the most valuable player or not. What are your thoughts about that?
Right. I know what you mean. I think as far as the end of season awards, I would have to think Ben Simmons is definitely has to be in the conversation. If just because he can do so much defensively with, and it's a hard thing to measure. It's not like with Harden where you can look at his points per game and go, that was, he dropped 35 points per game. That was an elite thing. With defense, it's a little hard to measure, and it's something that, as someone who watches most of the Sixers games, and more than I would watch the rest of the NBA, I just see with Ben Simmons, I see someone who can pair up with your point guard, a forward, maybe even a big man, and shut them down. And he's done it to superstar after superstar. So I think it would be hard for me to build a case against him winning for Joel Embiid. It's a little easier for me. While I think he's played at an MVP level, I don't know if how it's going to be gauged with him missing a couple of weeks. I think there was a little bias against him already, because he's known for missing so much time. So I think it's gonna be hard to say for sure that he's going to get top 5 MVP votes, but I don't know if he's going to get it. I think with LeBron being out for a long period of time, that definitely does open up the window for that. But it would be hard to say for sure that it's not like Allen Iverson's year when he won the MVP, where everybody kind of knew there was a really good chance about this, because that was clearly just his year. With Embiid, I can't say that, but if he, rebounds well from his injury and plays well down the stretch, and the Sixers have the number 1 seed, I could definitely see him getting the award.
That's true, I guess, and I'm expecting to Philadelphia to actually win the Eastern Conference because I personally don't like the way the super teams that trend has been continuing till now. So I would be really happy if 76ers beat Brooklyn Nets, but that also would eliminate the finals of the Kevin Durant and LeBron James showdown. Yeah, but anyways, it's going to be an amazing final. John, thank you so much coming on to my podcast. It was really good having you, and you talked about the process, and that discussion about the process it's something which has really intrigued me to to learn more about the NBA. So go and give a shout out to your podcast as well, and let our guests know where can they hear you.
So we record about once a week, and you can follow us on Twitter. We're at the Boobirds Podcast, and you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or where whatever platform you listen to podcasts on.
Yeah, that's great. And also, guys, don't forget that the next week is going to be a thrilling sports week. We
Yep.
have got Champions League, we have got NFL, we have got MLB, we have got cricket, IPL going on here. We got basketball as always. We have got Formula One as well. So it's going to be a really hectic week for sports. So don't forget to check out the Kev Pod or wherever you listen. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook as well. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to follow the Kev Pod. See you later.